This is a beautiful little town here, and you go down there and there's condos. You go over there, there's condos. Everywhere you look, there's condos and townhouses, and they all look the same, and they're taken away from the general beauty and the elegance of the towns. You know, they all look like it's a rubber stamped factory living environment. You know, and it kind of takes away from stuff.
I think they need to quit developing every spare piece of land that there is out there.
To some degree, I mean, I think when you have growth in smaller communities surrounding the Twin Cities, I think there's more positives to that than there are negatives.
I think people are going to have to take a look at how much driving they want to do versus biking, walking, that kind of thing. And I think communities are going to have to start maybe changing the way they're developed to promote those things.
By and large, I think the development has been done quite responsibly and pretty efficiently.
My husband and I specifically moved to Minnesota because of the outdoor recreational opportunities and the lifestyle. We made a conscious decision to move here.
I'm a hunter and a fisherman, an outdoorsman, so obviously I love the opportunity that we have to be outdoors. I own a boat, so we go on the lakes and rivers quite a bit, so I am concerned about, the clean waters for everything, the drinking water, the environmental issues, the wildlife. So that is a big concern of mine.
There was a time when I felt that our environment was on the losing end, but I believe that now, through various measures, we're getting an anchor on it again.
I've got children and grandchildren, and I think, obviously, I don't think that the quality of an environment is going to be as good for them or is as good for them as it was when I was younger.
And how about the boom that's happening? Obviously, transportation is part of this, but how about also people come here for quality of life? What's the state's role, if any, in maintaining green spaces, water, wetland, everything, with the suburbs and everything sprawling?
Well, first of all, we have more parkland, forest land, wildlife management areas, and publicly accessible open spaces and preserved spaces than 30 years ago. I mean, there's a perspective that somehow we've lost a bunch of that. Actually, it's grown. Now, the other thing is the population grows at the same time, and the population of Minnesota is growing quite robustly and will continue to do that. So as you look at concerns about sprawl, the way to handle that is to have good planning process. We're not going to be able to contain everybody in small areas. That's not going to work when you got 1 million more people coming in the next 15 or 20 years. But as the development inevitably occurs, we want the development to occur in ways that are most reasonable in terms of its impact on the environment. And that includes things like smart transportation strategies, smart development strategies, allowing for open space where appropriate and where the marketplace demands mixed-use housing that is clustered and makes maximum use of the space that's going to be occupied.
Is this a state issue, a local issue, the Met Council's issue?
It's some of both. It's a partnership between the state, the Met Council, local units of government. I don't think you want the state coming in and micromanaging how communities are designed. That's not our job. That's for city councils and planning commissions and to some extent the Met Council. But we can give broad goals and expectations and then let them fulfill that.
When you get local municipalities that get very upset with the idea of smart growth, for instance, you get the Metropolitan Council who argues that there should be a metropolitan planning. I think in the end, we're looking at over 1 million people coming into the metropolitan area by 2030, 1 million additional people, and we are going to have to be engaged in some long-term planning, and hopefully we can coordinate with the municipalities and get it done in a more rational basis. The transportation lines, mass transit lines in our highway system play a very critical role in where that growth will occur.
And how do we preserve, the green spaces, the wetlands, all those issues that affect the environment too when you have those 1 million people coming into the metro, when you have the new metro, as you say, sprawling all the way down to Rochester, all the way up to St. Cloud. What's the state's job in maintaining the environment and green spaces through more boom and more construction?
The state has to get involved not only with regard to enforcement as it relates to wetlands, but also in terms of acquisition with regard to easements and land purchases. Dakota County, interestingly, had a referendum, and the people of Dakota County voted on to pay tax money in to buy green space, and they overwhelmingly supported it. I think the people in the state overwhelmingly support green space and the preservation of our habitat. Right now, we're not doing a very good job of it at all, and the problem is there's no enforcement. And so we are losing wetlands, and that's creating a problem. The other issue is with regard to the acquisition of land. That's more, we're way behind on that, acquisition of land or easements. And the problem there is the accelerating price of land. We have 1031 exchanges going on right now, which push up the value of the land to the degree that the state's not in a very good position to be buying this or leasing or getting an easement. And that creates a problem in itself. We need to finance it. You get into the 3/16 amendment at that point, and I do support it.
What is the state's role in preserving, green spaces, wetlands, all those quality of life reasons, those people who probably are sprawling come here for? How do you balance all that out on a state level?
It's an amazing statistic. We're going to add, on average, about a new city a year, about 50,000 people a year in our state for the next 20, 30 years. I mean, think about what this means. And yet we're not ready for it. We don't have the infrastructure for it. We don't have the planning. We're not even anticipating what the consequences of this could be. I think the state has two roles. I think one is on things like wetland preservation, habitat preservation and growth, and reclaiming the quality of our waters. The state does have to take a lead in defining what the rules of the game are going to be and putting in place the resources to help move those things forward. But I think the state also has a role in helping local governments think through the implications of these choices, because it's local governments that face the fundamental decisions about building new houses or new industry, where the roads are going to be, how the sewers are going to work, or whether you're going to have sewers or septic tanks. And we've got to give our local government folks, especially those who are probably in the target zone for all this development, better tools and more support as they try to make these decisions, because these are not easy, and yet they have huge consequences as we go down, literally down the road. They're going to have huge consequences for our environment, for our roads, for our quality of life.
It seems like the next generation of this transit too is this discussion of North Star going to Big Lake.
That's
and
happening.
The St. Cloud development, and we talked about this a little bit before. I want to flesh this out a little bit more about Rochester booming and even the Lakes region kind of booming, and how we handle that as a state, having these booming economic centers.
Yeah, the demographic pattern of the state in part is you got, of course, the metropolitan area growing, and some people say, well, then you got the rest of Minnesota, but that, again, doesn't tell the whole story. The whole story is you got some large regional centers like Rochester, like St. Cloud, Mankato, Moorhead, and others that are booming growth areas in their own right. And one of the ways that we need to talk about transportation is how do you connect those regional centers with each other better and with the metropolitan area and other parts of the state. In some cases that might be rail, in some cases that might be dramatically improved roadways and bridges.
Could you foresee in the near future having all of those connected by rail?
Well, you have to keep in mind the economic cost-benefit analysis of rail. In some corridors it makes a lot of sense, in some corridors it doesn't. It's extremely expensive, particularly if you have to put the rail in new. And it may not be justified if you don't have enough volume of people using it. So in some of those corridors, yes, long-term. In others, probably not.
What's the state's role, if any, in these urban centers, the St. Clouds, the Rochesters?
The state has to create the tools that local governments can use and provide support for the use of those tools, because fundamentally these are local decisions. These are not, the state's not going to have a master plan for the physical development of the entire state, but the state does have to have, I think, pretty hardcore rules of the game so everybody's playing by the same rules, and a real actually back pressure now on water quality, on wildlife habitat, and on wetlands, because we are literally destroying these things with abandon at the moment. And I don't feel personally as though the state has done its job, both to make sure what the rules are and clear to everybody, but also to insist that our local officials be part of the process of attaining those goals.
I think what they call the SMSA, the Statistical Metropolitan, I can't remember what the SMSA is.
We love to name every acronym.
Right,
yeah.
but the metropolitan area essentially really should be defined as going from Rochester to St. Cloud, particularly when you get to things like Medical Alley, some of the medical innovation, the Mayo Clinic, the university, the medical technology that exists within the metropolitan area, they tie together. St. Cloud also is big in that area.